Hi, everyone, and welcome to Nature Connections. So thanks to everyone who's watching this video. In the Nature Connections interview series, I talk to people from all paths of life, but who have one thing in common, is that they help us to connect with nature and bring nature into our lives and our homes. And so today, in today's episodes, I'm super excited to be crossing the Atlantic Ocean and to speak with Sha Lalapet, who is joining us from Toronto in Canada. So hi Sha, and thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, Kemal. This is amazing. I'm super excited to be here.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm going to share a bit more about what you do, and I'm really excited about the next 30 minutes where you're going to tell us more about nature and design and how that's incorporated into what you do. But so Sha and I met over Instagram, and we found that, well, we have one thing in common is how nature makes us feel, and in terms of like an element of design, I guess, in our homes. So Sha is a designer, and she just set up her studio last Feb. So not this Feb 2020. It's
Mhm.
called Sha Studios. So that's in Toronto, right, in Canada. She has a well-being focused approach to design in which nature plays a really big role. So I'm super excited to hear more about this in the next 30 minutes or so. So first question, I guess what I'd love to start with is if you could tell us a bit more about, who's the woman behind Sha Studios, what you do, and why you've chosen to do this.
Absolutely. So my beginning into design itself was not very straightforward. It's not like I finished my high school and I was like, I knew I wanted to be a designer. I had a bit of trying out different things. So was actually got I got into journalism for my undergrad, and then I did a master's right after in international relations. And I was pretty sure that's the path I wanted to go. Um, like all kids at 20 in their 20s are.
Yeah,
It
international
turns
relations is
out
a big one.
exactly. And then I did work a little bit in media. I tried my hand at different jobs, and while I understood it and I was able to get the hang of it, and I was actually good at it, up until the last one, which was to be a researcher focused on the Middle East about basically the politics and the whole. And it was primarily during the Syrian war when it broke out.
Mhm.
And it was very emotionally taxing for me to even be somebody who researched about it from a very objective point of view. And I'm trained in it, but it was very tough. And one of the things I would do ever since I think as a teenager is I would constantly change up my environment. And anytime I felt I had a very stressful day, I would come home and I would keep changing it. And I would keep changing it all the time, like over the years. So it was almost like I became my own lab rat and Frankenstein, sort of in that way.
Yeah.
Um, and also, there was one day that I made a connection. I was like, wait a minute, I am changing certain things about my environment, and that is having an impact on how I'm feeling. And there are certain things that I'm bringing into my space, certain specific objects that have the capacity to influence my mood.
Mm.
And I became very fascinated with this and I became very excited about it. But I was like, being the kind of geeky person that I am, I was like, I need to go to school and I need to get my design education. And that's what I did. And then I realized, well, I'm scratching the surface and I need to be having this complete freedom to explore that, because what's comforting to me isn't comforting to you and not another person. So for me, it was like, okay, how do I find that balance and how do I provide this? Because our mental health and our sense of well-being is a very important part, and especially with how life is nowadays.
Mm.
So it was kind of became this thing where I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, is I
Mhm.
want to figure out that connection of how can we change people's environments and therefore create a space for them to feel comfortable and maybe even thrive. And that is my route into Sha Studio.
I
And
love the roots.
using the catchphrase today.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so that is how I became a designer, and that's what Shaw Studio stands for.
That's crazy. I love that it's like really deeply rooted in your like personal experience, really, like
Mhm.
of experimenting with that and sort of learning by doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm very as a research background sort of trained,
Mm,
it was important for me, and I was very specifically trained with qualitative research.
mm,
And for me, it was about really splitting every thread of what it is that I was feeling.
mm,
So it was about understanding color, color psychology. It was about understanding texture, the different sensory satisfaction that happens when you come into the space. So
mm,
is it just about, wow, this is pretty? No, it is about lived experience. It is about your environment adapting to everything that your life throws at you, at
mm,
your also with the way you feel every day. So some days will be good, some days won't be. So
mm,
instead of sort of putting each individual in a box and saying, this is beautiful, so you consider it beautiful, it's about learning what makes people feel good inside, what comforts them, and
mm,
sort of bringing that into the space. So it is about addressing all the senses on
mm.
any given day, which is like nature and
Yeah,
adapting to the environment as nature does.
excellent. Yeah, we're going to speak more about this nature for sure. One thing I picked up on your, I think it's on your website, like about what Sha Studio does, is about how you say like you want your spaces, the spaces that you design, to be sort of the perfect backdrop for our, I think, our life stories and memories. And
Mhm.
I love that. It resonates so much with me because there's so much more to a house than four walls, right? It's like it's a home. That's where you live. That's where you resource yourself. It's where all these things happen in your life. And so I love that approach that you have. It's like a real like sanctuary uh, for our lives. Yeah. And so, can you tell us a bit more about how you actually go about creating that uniqueness and that environment for each client? Like,
Mhm.
how do you do that?
Absolutely. So after a lot of trial and tests, I developed my own research questionnaire.
Mm,
So I actually go into meetings with like, hey, I just want to have a conversation and I'm going to take notes. So this is a conversation where I would talk to the individuals or one person, depending on who I'm designing for. So yes, the basics of how does your day, like who spends most time at
mm,
home, and all of your basic designer questions will be in there, but I go I go deeper, sorry. And
mm,
what I do is I kind of ask, okay, tell me about a space that comes to mind when you are feeling stressed. What happens to you? What do you seek? Do you seek to see something, and does that have an impact? Because a lot of people don't carry their individuality on their sleeve. It's very hidden and it's very layered inside other things. So my goal is to slowly sort of chip away and find out. And some clients like touch more than anything. That's what soothes them. So that would mean I would incorporate a lot of soft fabrics. I would incorporate a lot of textures in their space because that soothes and calms the nerves, especially when on a crazy day.
mm,
Some people are very visual. So it's about understanding what visual makes them happy. And it could be a childhood memory. Like if you've seen the spaces I recently on Instagram, you would see that it is very much tied to backstory and a childhood memory and a reminder of someone.
mm,
So for each individual, it's that different thing. So
mm,
it is all about understanding that. Some folks are very much into color, like they love the use of color. Others are like, no, remove the color. And I like the very calm and
mm,
very simple space. But at the same time, it has to have my individuality. So I recently designed a nursery where the parent was saying, well, I'm inspired by the cosmos. I'm
mm,
inspired by texture.
mhm,
Go. That was the thing. That was a big takeaway after our meeting, obviously. So that was it. It was about creating a
mm,
version of what makes them feel comfortable. And without fail, every time I come out from these meetings, knowing this person a lot more and sort of facilitating that. And that is the service aspect of what I do.
mm,
It is not about the flashy, cool, expensive stuff. It's not about stuff. It
mm,
is about what does that stuff do for you.
mhm,
So that is how I go about it, and it varies on who is in front of me and
mm.
um, what kind of tastes each individual have
Yeah.
will.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, a really tailored questionnaire that you've worked on with experience for sure. This all makes me think that maybe well, you can't see it, but I've got a pink velvety chair. Maybe that's like, bringing back candy memories from my childhood and like my soft toys.
Oh, absolutely,
The chair I
absolutely.
work in, so yeah.
We do it unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
We always seek things
Mm,
that comfort us unconsciously all the time. It's just that if there was somebody designated who was able to list
yeah.
everything, bring it all down, and then create it in a beautiful way that you can
Mm.
enjoy it, then that's, I think, where I come
It's
in
magic,
terms of my
really.
expertise.
Yeah, it's magic, really.
I hope it is.
So
But I
something
think
else
it,
that you talk about on your website, or that seems to define your approach, it's this slow living approach. Um, can you tell us a bit more about what that actually means? Because I don't think I know exactly what that means. Like what is slow living, and also then how does nature fit in to your slow living approach?
absolutely. So, slow living itself is part of the slow living movement that started coming through, I think, about 30, 40 years ago by very specific individuals who were propagating the idea where not we cannot be at the same pace of machines and advancement in technology, that we have to slow it down. And it's about using a lot of thought, putting a lot of thought into every object that you consume and everything that is in your life.
Mm,
And ultimately they do have, it has a framework. It is, I consider it a framework and not necessarily a manual. And I like that about this approach because
mhm,
I'm all about not being in a box in any which way. And when it comes to design and exploration, it is about using it in a specific way that makes sense to each individual.
mm,
And my through my studio, the slow living approach is making conscious choices with what it is that you're putting into your space.
mhm,
By that, if that object doesn't carry a functional or a personal value, it is clutter that is ultimately going to stress you in your space.
Guilty.
So, yeah. And some objects will have no function at all, but
Mm,
it'll be something meaningful. So it is about understanding and bringing objects or reminder of things in your life that actually considers you as an individual, because you're spending all this money, you're spending all this time in these environments.
mm,
So it has to make sense in some way, even if it's emotional sense, it has to connect, right?
mhm.
So that is one, I guess, branch off of this of that theory,
Yeah.
um, that I put into practice. The other thing that I do is to try and support local communities, local vendors, use local labor
Mm,
to bring my projects to fruition. The other thing is, if I was getting things from overseas, it has to have that special connection and meaning to the client.
mm,
If I am making that conscious choice to say, okay, I'll ship something from somewhere else, well, then it has to have value.
mhm.
So it is about being considered not just towards each individual, but also to the environment in the long term. And most importantly, it is not about trend. It is completely about the individual, and
Mhm.
that individual dictates what that trend is,
Mhm.
right? Because 2 years down the line, you may not feel like the environment supports you. Yeah, by all means, change, because that is the most inevitable thing. Um, However, it is not about saying, this is the nice flashy thing that you saw on Instagram. Here, I have that for you. So it is completely going against that and tailoring it to the individual
Mm.
that makes them comfortable in the space.
Mhm.
So I think the slow approach is going deep and coming from a place of intention and understanding of why this space is coming together,
Mm.
and also taking the time to investigate before you buy and
Mm.
not spend like a bunch of money for no reason.
Yeah, which is super easy these days. I mean, there's so much stuff thrown at you,
Mhm.
and really great stuff as well. And you just have to do that exercise of being, mindful as to like, is this going to, bring me something meaningful, or like bring me some kind of emotion, and also is this like made in a good way? And yeah, it's our, I understand, like it's our sort of duty as consumers, but also like there's a lot of benefit from that in our lives if we do that well. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that that's incorporated into what you do. And so in terms of nature then, and how you bring that into your practice, into your design, and into the homes of the people that you work with. What's your approach to this? How do you consider nature to be important?
I think nature, to me personally, is the most important thing on
Mm,
the planet. Like it goes over above and beyond normal love for nature, I think. And
mm,
that is because I think it's a journey of self-discovery that I have had. And this is a universal thing. I think we're
mm,
all intrinsically connected, and we're all intrinsically connected to nature. And the farther we come away from it, the more stressful we end up getting. So
yeah.
personally, one of the things I love to do is to be in nature.
Mm,
And anytime I had a busy day, even doing the thing that I love doing, it's about balancing it with some kind of downtime and me time amongst trees, among in a forest or by water.
mm,
Um, Basically, it is about connecting and constantly developing that relationship on a personal level. And when I go into people's homes, the privilege of going to people's homes and then creating a space for them, right?
mhm,
It almost always comes down to, hey, what is the memory you like? Oh yeah, I like the beach. Oh,
mhm,
I remember this trip we went to Bali and we went to a safari, or we lived in a treehouse for a day. So it's people don't realize it, but
mhm.
your most peaceful, calming moments or your most chill moments happen to be in the presence of nature.
Yeah.
And it's such a big part of what I do because it is also a huge source of inspiration for me when it comes to colors, when it comes to textures, when it comes to appreciating the different nuances, how certain materials interact with each other. Like it would be almost impossible for me to do what I'm doing without the influence of nature.
Mm,
So for me, there is a very strong connection. And when I design, even if you don't see a plant directly, you would see elements of nature always in that space.
mm,
And whether it's being, if somebody wanted a more grounding space, there would be a lot more wood that's used and
mm,
sustainably sourced wood, hopefully. And someone wants a lot of texture, yeah, it's going to have seagrass, it's going to have cork, basically things that you can use
mm,
to remind you of nature and have that tactile sort of connection in
mm.
your environment. So for me, it's all about recreating what exists in a very personalized way for each person.
Wow. Yeah, I love what you were saying about how it's like a really sort of helping each person develop their own relationship with nature. Um,
Mhm.
because I mean, definitely everyone's connected to nature and we feel that. And I think some people more than others, but in general, like everybody just has that deeper connection. But I love that that you're saying that it's very individual. And so that you're using like both like, textures and visuals and yeah, different elements of nature and different ways of experiencing nature to bring that into the home. And so you were talking about obviously the textural aspects, but so what are like the actual concrete ways in which you bring the different sort of senses, I guess, of nature into your home and into your own home, but also into your clients' homes? And more like if you want to give us a bit more detail of like what that looks like.
So I'll use my home because I'm
Right.
the client, right?
Tell us about your home.
Yeah, thank you. So this home was first designed in like, okay, we moved in last year, so we just came in here, and we were like, okay, it's time to decorate. And we came from a very tiny condo in downtown Toronto to the suburbs, so we didn't have a couch. Like, it was just my partner and I. We didn't really have a couch, so we were like, okay, obviously I have the aesthetic sensibility to pick some
Mhm,
things. So I did pick some things and it was more functional. And I didn't really develop the complete understanding of what I would ultimately end up doing at
mhm,
that time in life. So I just went in. And then a few months in, I realized, okay, this environment does not work for me. And I kept going outside and I kept being outside. And in winter in Canada, you can't really get all of these colors and textures and everything. It's pretty blanket.
Bring white and gray into your homes.
Yeah, white, gray, and more of that. And I started reading a lot about wabi sabi, the Japanese philosophy of embracing imperfection. I started reading about Huga, the Danish philosophies of life, and I started reading and understanding. And I sort of went back further into my own story, and I was like, okay, what are the things that made me feel grounded and peaceful, at peace with myself? Then I realized it was always this warming sense of being in a forest on a very hot day, and then cooling down at a beach at some point after. It's just different memories, right? But it's very...
Let me soak that in.
I know. Exactly. That's what I was like, okay, I love the feeling of sand on my feet. That's what makes me feel like I'm near the beach. So it's that excitement. It's really, really like self-awareness to a dangerous level. No, I'm joking. I'm kidding. But it's about knowing that I genuinely like that. And I like the visual of trees. I love little plants like the one here, but I also love the big trees. I love the feeling of being enveloped and safe in nature. And I love the warmth, and I come from, my origin is in India. So the warm, the summer, the heat, it was that terracotta and rust and brown. So all of these notes that I was giving, if you hear that, that's nature. There's a thunderstorm outside.
Great, bringing nature into the interview.
Absolutely.
We're connecting with nature.
We are at a very real level.
And I can hear it, yeah.
Yeah. So so that was my sort of notes that I went back, and I was like, okay, I'm going to incorporate the warming tones in my environment. I'm going to incorporate a lot of texture because I love the feeling of things in my hands. And I love feeling comfortable in very soft surfaces. And that is, again, a very universal thing, but it's also, what is this fabric that's touching your skin? And for me, it was always linen. It was always something contrasting with linen. So it was about analyzing my body's responses to different things. And it was about bringing that into this digestible canvas that I could go on and live my life in. So that even when I'm having a stressful day, the environment has its role to play here. Like it calms everything down, calms the nerves, it comforts, and it gives me ideas, and it inspires me to be like, hey, there is a book in front of me, open it, read it, escape whatever crazy is happening. So visually, it comes together completely based on the little memory capsules of what makes me smile. And then it's sort of just bringing that into a space. Spending the same amount of money you normally would to decorate a home, but doing it with a little more mindfulness and intention. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, definitely. You took us on a journey inside your home, and it, like, yourself, you put your questionnaire to yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Like, I actually went through the process, and I always do that. And I don't consider it to be the final version, right? There's always room for development because we as individuals keep growing and developing. So maybe 3 years down the line, it'll look very different. And it's about embracing that too, as nature does all the time.
Yeah. So you were saying, like, obviously there's the obvious, like, plants, right, that we can put in our homes. That's like actual, like, live nature. But what are some, like, tips do you that you have to sort of bring in nature in simple ways? Because obviously there's textures, like, what comes to mind? What could you share that you think would help to bring nature into the home, like in simple ways?
I think outside of bringing actual plants, like you mentioned, I think getting some things that you can put, not your glossy ceramics sort of things that are a little rugged around the edges, things that are a little rough, things that are muted in color and earthy in color. Those are very good ways which have an instant grounding effect, like to your senses. And things like gold and other metals that as humans we're not actually ever using, unless, of course, to decorate ourselves. And mind you, that is very decorative ultimately. Like if I had a gold flask here, like it is flashy, but
Hmm.
it gives me a little bit of smile. And of course, by all means, but it's about choosing things, even in your frames. Don't go with white or black,
Hmm.
go with something warmer, go with earthy tones in terms of fabrics. Don't go with polyester in your double lined blackout curtains. Do 3 layers of the same soft cotton curtains. You would still
Oh,
get
that's
the
a big
same
difference.
privacy. Yeah, you would still get it, but then it'll be calming and cooling. You'll never feel like you're, like something is over you. So
Hmm.
it's all about uplifting and opening yourself, and use any color you choose. Like there should never be a rule. First of all, I'm against using color to determine gender. Like that is something that I don't
Oh
subscribe
yeah,
to at all.
understood.
Like pink for girls, blue for boys. That's not me at all. So I would recommend use blue to feel calm,
Hmm.
to bring down the heightening. If your job is very like high stress, then you want to use blue and you want to use green. So basically go through the color wheel and see what spaces could use it. Like kitchen, for example, could use a lovely terracotta or an orange or a brown. Because there's a lot of activity that happens there, and the type of textures you need there, yeah, you do need things that will clean off easily. So
Hmm.
go with more metal like copper or ceramics that are imperfect. So there are so many little ways,
Hmm.
but if we did it with an intention of what do I do in this space,
Hmm.
right? What is my goal in this space? If
Hmm.
it's an office, well, I'm trying to be productive. So
Yeah,
maybe don't go with super calm, relaxing
yeah.
things, because they will put you to sleep at some point, right? And you
But
have
what
this
do you
blue
think of
light
my
coming from
office
your butt.
decor?
It's beautiful. Like there's no way you would ever feel stressed in there. You just have to look at that
Exactly.
bunny.
Neither will I sleep well in here, I think.
No, you
Little
wouldn't sleep
spastic.
well. Exactly. Exactly. So my bedroom, for example, is very restrained,
Mm.
and it's very much color on color, monochromatic, and more like putty or earthy in feel.
Mm.
Again, inspired by the feeling of sand on my feet, and
Mm.
how am I going to incorporate that in a space.
Awesome.
So I would say going with the understanding of each space and what you do in that space, and using color or texture to sort of give you that little dose of nature when it
Mm.
feels like there's no nature around you, especially when we're in
Yeah.
front of devices.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. Love it. For the tips. I'm taking them because I'm also repainting, decorating, and
Yeah, I can see that. I can see your face sort of changed. You were like,
yeah, I was like,
mm-hmm.
oh, where's my notepad? Got to write something down. No, I'll take mental notes. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, super interesting to hear that, in all the choices we make, there's obviously something more behind it, and that we can consciously make better choices. That, using nature's color palette, nature's textures, nature's senses. Of course, we haven't talked about smells, sounds as well, like water and things, but all these things, like, you can use in a mindful way to generate those emotions that nature conveys to us. Maybe I can ask you one last question, which is, I wanted to ask you, you talked about trees and that feeling of being in a warm forest, and um, so it seems like you also have this connection to trees in the same way that I try to express it and convey it through my artwork. But I'd love to know, is there like a specific tree or a specific kind of tree, type of tree in your life that sort of evokes positive memories, or is meaningful to you in a way?
Mm, I would say there's definitely mango trees have my
Mango
heart,
trees.
because my grandmother had a mango tree. And the interesting thing, there was a community of monkeys that would find themselves there and just sit on the wall, just each passing, like,
I love
helping themselves to this grocery store. And my grandmother would sit there with a stick, like, just, of course, it was never to, it was only to intimidate, but she
Mm.
would keep tapping the ground to be like, scare them. And the little ones started getting scared, but the older ones were like, you can do all you want. I know you're not approaching me.
They're mine.
They're totally fine. It was very, and I grew up with that visual. So it always brings me a lot of joy and a lot of comfort. And living in Canada, I mean, the amount of, just, I would say if you've ever come to Canada, definitely go to the Terra Nova National Park in Newfoundland. It is one of the most magical forests I've ever been into, and
Great.
hiking there, and it's just takes me back to the best possible memories. So there's a lot of spruce and pine and so many different
Mm.
trees there, and I felt like I was a different person there, as nature has that. It has that transformative effects on us. So definitely that's the other tree. I think that apart from that, I think just I have a tree. My property has a tree.
Mm.
It's a weed tree, and uh, people are like, yeah, you got to break the weed tree down. I'm like, no, I like it. I'm never gonna bring it down. So I
Yeah.
guess personally, there's a tree that watches over me as I work. Watching over me right now, and I feel instantly connected.
Mm.
And my desk actually used to face that way.
Mm.
Actually, it was right in the middle, and I wanted to see this tree so badly that I turned and oriented it
I
to
love it.
the
Yeah.
window.
That's
So yeah.
exactly how I optimize my desk as well. Like I don't want to be like facing back to the window because there's this tree.
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah, it's
and
also
hopefully,
respecting
yeah.
the energy of the tree and just being acknowledging that I give you more than, sorry, you give me more than I give you,
Mhm.
like to the tree.
Yeah, and hopefully just like the designs that you create, the homes you create, it'll be a witness to your story and your memories in that home. So, and it'll live on, hopefully if no one, cuts it down after you,
Yeah.
to see a lot of things that, you would have built. So that's a nice thought. Thanks for sharing that. Mango trees and the forests in Canada. Can you tell me the name again?
It is the Terra Nova
Terra
Forest
Nova.
National Park.
Great, wonderful. I'll have a look for sure. Thank
Yeah,
you
it
so much.
was magical. There were squirrels coming in and visiting, and everybody felt safe there.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Sha. It's been really great to hear, what you're doing and how, what nature means to you personally. So thanks for sharing that about your own home and
Mhm.
how you help people, design their spaces in the best way possible for them. And that nature really has a big role to play in the design and, like it's really important for us. And I'm so glad to you highlighted that and that you shared all that with us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Great to meet you and properly chat. And yeah,
Mhm.
let's keep in touch. Thank you again.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. This was a wonderful experience, and I'm so happy I was able to tell you my design story.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye, Sha.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.